All right. Hello and welcome to yet another very special episode of the Mike Sennello Show. Tonight we're going to have on recent appointee and incumbent Councilman Sal Rynkiewicz, who is running for re-election to that seat with the town council. Just to surprise everybody before we get started of the interview schedule so far and what's to come. We have interviewed Mayor Bass. We've done our interviews with Councilman Mike Nahom. We interviewed Board of Education candidate Eric Hansel. We interviewed Board of Finance candidates Diane Clafe and Joe DiGregorio. That most recent one was just this past Tuesday night. All of those videos are on both my Facebook page and are on my YouTube channel. If you're watching at home on YouTube, there is a link to watch this video on my Facebook page in this video's description. Same with Facebook. If you want to watch on YouTube instead, you can go to the link that's in this video's description right now. Those channels are also where you'll find all of those interviews. I've even gone so far as to make a playlist on my YouTube channel for all of these interviews. Upcoming, the schedule so far is where we are hammering out the last details with Board of Finance Chairman Walter O'Connor, as he's agreed to come on to the show. Again, time and date coming as we get that finished up. I'm also working on another interview for Sunday night as well. I'll give you more info on that when I get that information. If not, then we'll just do a standard episode, a regular episode of the Mike Sennello Show. So that's just the schedule upcoming. That's how you guys can stay in tune with everything. Hope you guys have enjoyed. As I've mentioned throughout the course of this series, we will, at the end of this interview, get to your audience Q&A, so get those questions in now. If you have questions for our candidates, get them in as soon as they come before you forget. We'll go over those questions, and we'll forward those on to Sal as soon as the interview is over. Should be about 45 or so minutes in. So that's your way of being able to engage directly with these candidates, so get those questions in. And with all of that said, and with all of that now out of the way, let's introduce our candidate, our guest for tonight, Sal Rynkiewicz. Sal, thanks so much for coming on.
Mike, thanks so much for inviting me. Appreciate it.
So, just as I've mentioned throughout the course of this series, as we do with all of the guests on my show that are candidates for elected office, I like the audience to get to know the person before we get to know the candidate. So, start you off with the same question I always ask everybody on this channel when we do these types of interviews. Sal, what brought you to New Milford?
So, some time ago, when I was living in Queens, I got married, child, and everything else. I started to work in Westchester County. I was about to buy a house and whatnot. I started to look for places to live, basically, to move out from Queens, New York, and start basically living outside with family and all that stuff. It took me about 2 years. I went all over the places: Dutchess County, Westchester County, Putnam County, stuff like this. So how I ended up being in New Milford, it was just a luck. One of these days, I was driving over. I went to the mall in Danbury.
Okay.
And then before that, I figured, why shouldn't I call some realtor in the area and see maybe they can show me something around, because I didn't know Connecticut. I lived through different states, but not too much in Connecticut. So I called William Ravis somewhere in Danbury and said, "Hey, can you show me some places?" It was a very nice gentleman. He said, "Sure. I live in a town called New Milford. I can show you some places in Danbury. Then we can go to the New Milford which I come from." So we did see some places in Danbury. Then he says, "Hey, are you interested to see New Milford?" I'm like, "Sure, why not? You know the place. You're from New Milford." So, and this is in the timeline that 2 years I'm looking for a house, and I'm like, I have to get a house now. I'm just moving down somewhere. I'm just moving out because finding a house it was frustrating, and then. We get in the car with him. We're driving to New Milford. I'm like, this looks cool. I saw two houses that day. We're talking 2002. Two houses I saw. The one I'm living right now, and another one was up Route 67. And the same day, I put offer on two houses because I don't know which one is going to be accepted or not accepted and all that stuff. And sure enough, I got my offer accepted to one of the houses at where I'm living right now, and that's how it started. In. And before that, actually, before I moved in, and to be here, we came a couple of times. We walked by the river. We wanted to see the downtown, the people, the climate, what's going on in the town. We liked it a lot, and I was just fortunate. As I said, there was a luck, and it was a fortunate luck that we ended up being here, and that's been 2002. So it's been 19 years now.
19 years. And in that course of time, I mean, you got a chance to really see New Milford from, I guess, a neutral perspective, because you weren't born here. So let's talk about like those motivating factors. What has changed in that time, for the good, for the better? What have you seen in those 19 years?
So in 19 years, when I moved into New Milford, I remember the Kmart instead of Walmart, right? So those are the things. Stop and Shop was obviously there. There was completely no plaza on the other side where you have a Panera Bread, when you have a Coles and all that stuff. That completely hasn't existed. It was one road in, one road out, like one lane type of thing. When you got on Route 7, there was Super 7, but to get to Super 7 it was completely different flavor back then, right? So taking into consideration that and where we are right now, it's just two different towns basically. You have so many more stores, so much more business came in. It's just a different town altogether. The town green, though, its charm, it's always the same. So you get the same climate, you get the same. You have the restaurants, the small streets. That stays the same, and that's a beautiful thing. But outside of that, when you go across the bridge, obviously the business came in. So that whole thing changed quite a bit.
So you've described kind of. You said it was basically a completely different town. Have those changes over those times, in those 19 years, would you say that those changes overall have improved New Milford, or have they been to its detriment?
Oh, absolutely have. They have improved. Well, so let's take this one, right? So someone like myself moves in with wife and a 4-year kid. Before, pretty much, if you wanted to go buy clothing or something like this, you had to go to Denbury Mall, something like this. Now, ever since the Coles moved in, the Home Goods moved in, and some other stores moved in, you don't have to go to those places anymore. You have it right here, so it's so much easier. I mean, shopping for grocery was there and all that stuff, but then Walmart moved in, more services moved in, and it just made it so much more accessible. And I didn't have to travel back and forth to Denver and so forth. So I didn't have to spend all that time to go to different places. I could have gone to New Milford. So all that is for better.
Okay, so would you say in short that when you were making the decision to move here from Queens, it would be more attractive now than it was then?
It's a different thing. So Queens or Queens, New York, Brooklyn, Manhattan, it's a completely different setup, right? Big cities. Nightlife and everything else, right? So it's New Milford is not going to be Queens or Brooklyn or Manhattan.
I'm sorry. Let me correct. Let me amend that question, because I think we're answering two different questions here. So New Milford 2021 versus New Milford 2002. Have those changes, have those improvements? Would you consider it more attractive in that decision making? If you were making that decision to move from Queens to New Milford now versus in 2002, would you consider it more attractive or less attractive as a decision?
It's more attractive. Obviously, It's more attractive because now we have more things you can access without going, 20 miles down south to some other different places. So it's definitely for better.
Yeah, and in that time, you said you were able to have a family up here?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. Okay, so then we have you moving here in 2002. What attracted you? Now that you're running for office, what has attracted you to government and politics in town?
First and foremost, I knew some people around here because I have a social life which is pretty dynamic. So I did know some people before, and I asked, hey, how can I help? When I settled here, when I saw the growth of time and everything else, I asked, how can I help? Right. I'm in this business. I can do this. I can spend some time help you help this town. Is there any chance I can sit on one of the boards and stuff like that? is, right? So 2 years ago, I was offered the Zoning Board of Appeals to be sitting on the board. I met with Mayor Bass. Mayor Bass says, "Hey, would you consider this?" I'm like, "Sure, of course. I have the time. I can definitely help if I can." So it's a voluntary thing. Me giving out something to the community, and that's how it started. I got on the Zoning Board of Appeals. It's been 2 years now, but that's pretty much how it started.
So the Zoning Board of Appeals is an oft overlooked commission. So do you want to just let people know what the Zoning Board of Appeals is and how that's different from the Zoning Board itself?
So zoning board is basically if you're building something or you have new constructions, you have new business, if you have something new, you are within the zoning regulations. Now, Zoning Board of Appeals takes care of cases that, let's say you want to have an extension to your house, you have an addition to your house, and there are circumstances that normally you wouldn't be able to build. So you come to the Zoning Board of Appeals and say, okay, I know maybe it's not within the guidelines for the zoning, but because of the circumstances, I'm looking to have a release from what I'm trying to do. So people come over here to the Zoning Board of Appeals and they put in an application. We'll consider the applications, and it goes pretty smoothly, very smoothly actually.
So then is this more of a value judgment? Is this a judgment call when they're making those decisions, or is there a prescriptive policy on the books?
No, we have a guidelines and there is a policy to it. So it's not a judgment. I mean, the judgment comes to place because you have all this information coming to you. So typically, how it works is you have an applicant, and then you may have people for and against sitting on the audience, right? So then applicant is presenting his case, what he or she wants to do or them want to do, and then if you have someone on the audience that wants to speak for or against those things, and you take those two things in consideration within the guidelines that you have with the Zoning Board of Appeals, the zoning boards, and you make a decision based on that. There's a few of us sitting. You have to have 4 people voting yes to be yes. If you have anything like less than that, it's no.
So would you say there's a great deal of discretion when it comes to ZBA, or is it is there limited role for discretion there?
Well, so you're coming to get some kind of a discretion to begin with, right? Because you're going outside of something that's outlined to begin. Now you're asking for something to be extended or built or whatever, and which is semi-extraordinary. So in definition, it's the role is to have it to consider something that's not normally wouldn't be considered, and then you're judging based on the needs and explanations and whatever the case would be, and the people obviously for and against.
It seems like it's somewhat ad hoc then. The situations you run into in the Zoning Board of Appeals, it's not like you know what you're really going to run into when you go into the office until it falls into your lap.
So we're getting applicants' information and all the information that needed to be supplied to us prior to that. So I have at least a week or 2 or 3 sometimes to go over the documentation and get prepared before the ZBA meeting. So we're coming up with the documentation. We know who's going to be in front of us. We know what we're going to discuss. Sometimes you can always Google the property, see where the property is located, what is it like, and all that stuff. With the technology today, it's relatively easy. So you come prepared to something like this, and then you get evidence, and you get either one side, 2 sides, or whatever, the 3 sides presenting their case.
So how then does that experience and that perspective on the Zoning Board of Appeals translate to town council?
So first of all, you're dealing with audience already, correct? So you're dealing with the cases coming in or the applicants coming into you and all that stuff. You're getting introduced to the livelihood of this neighborhood. I'm getting some briefings from the zoning boards, not only from the Zoning Board of Appeals, but the zoning and everything else. So it prepares you to be then afterwards. First of all, you are involved in a livelihood of the town, and then you're getting familiar with how the town operates, right? So, for instance, before someone comes to ZBA, they would have to go through the ZB, and then stuff like this. So you get a kind of, what is the structure of the town, how it works, what would it take, how long would it take, and stuff like this. So it helps you out then afterwards, basically, to understand one of the wheels that works within this municipality.
Right. So then the new wheel that you're talking about is the town council, which you're running for re-election on. So what do you consider to be the proper and appropriate role of a councilman and of the council?
So councilman and council is it's like a board of directors, right? So you have Mayor Pete Pass, who's the CEO of the town. Let's just call it that.
Ostensibly, right? Yes.
And that's pretty much what happens. Then you have 9 people that sit right next to him on those council meetings, and it's like a board of directors. When the issues or whatever comes in front of the town councils, it's being presented, and you're making a decision based on the artifacts presented, right? So in a way, like when I'm going to zoning board of appeals, I'm dealing with specifically one thing, the zoning board of appeals, and someone's trying to do something extraordinary based on the need and couldn't do in zoning. Now the town council, it doesn't focus only on one thing. It's a broad spectrum. There could be an issue, or could be a request to from the Board of Education, Finance, whomever that would be. It's just a completely different spectrum, and much broader than this. So by me being a zoning board of appeals, I've just witnessed something for 2 years, one of those things that may or may not come in front of the councilman.
This broad spectrum that you're talking about, that's something I've talked about on the show when it comes to the position of the town council, that when you're getting elected into office, it's difficult to know what the issues are that you're going to be facing, what the contentious issues you're going to be facing are for those 2 years going in, because it's covers such a broad arena, and everything's taken kind of as it comes before you. So one of those things that we've kind of run into is the Arpa Funds. This is something that there's no way the previous tenure could have known that this was going to be something that they were going to have to deal with. So Sal, this is something that's come up very recently, and it's actually come up during your tenure. Has this been something of a trial by fire for you, or were you prepared, or were you quite prepared to have something like this be hammered out?
So as you said, it's hard to prepare for everything, right?
Yeah.
So you have a situation that you were dealing with $7.9 million that New Milford was granted. I mean, that didn't happen 10 years ago, 15 years ago, whatever the years ago. Yeah. So that is something new. Now, in situations like this, the ARPA and everything else, right? So there's a discussion, obviously, about this thing. So you have to, in this specific case, you have to do your homework, and you have to understand what ARPA is, what ARPA does, who granted the money for what, and all that stuff. So it's kind of like a reconnaissance before, when you're trying to do the research, you're being informed. What does it do? How we can use this and everything else, and then there's a discussion how we can use the money based on the guidelines given by ARPA. So no, we cannot prepare for something like this by the research, by discussing things and needs for the town and all the other discussions that we have as the town councilman. Then you start getting more familiar, and then you get familiar with the with opinions that some of the people would have, which might be different than mine, in regards to the ARPA.
So what would you say from a philosophical standpoint as it relates to the role of the town council? What would you say is informing your decision making when it comes to these ARPA funds?
So it works like this. So there is with the fund, there's some requests and some needs that we know that there can come from different groups, correct? Like on the town council meetings, there are different groups coming in. There are some proposals that Mayor Pete Bass is bringing over, and we know, or there is some information flowing into it, and says, okay, we need money for ambulance, we need money for this, that, whatever that would be, and itemize things, and then Nothing happens yesterday, the day before. So we have some time to look at these things, to research these things, and then within our town council body, we're discussing how this can be used, and sometimes the amount is getting decreased, sometimes it's being increased for the most part, but you're learning as it goes, right? Because like anything else is a research, like anything else is a need. Obviously, everybody has got some needs, but then there is a need for something now. There's a need for something tomorrow. There is a need for something 3 years from now, 4 years from now. So all those things, as the information flows, then you take in consideration. And then there is a public participation. It's like, for instance, in ARPA, we've sent there was a questionnaire, and the questionnaire came back, and people actually they were vocal about, okay, so what are the things that are important to them? And based on this, you get this questionnaire, and you can see, okay, the New Milford people are looking for this or that or something else, and then you see what the public participation is. It's just that gives you a more opportunity to get more familiar with the needs.
So you've alluded to an idea that basically everybody that's been on here has talked about, is the difference between a want and a need, especially as it relates to the ARPA funds. So could you give us an example of, because there's been a lot of requests that have come through the mayor's office, the town council, there's been a lot of ideas that have been bandied about. Could you give us an example of something you would consider a want and something that you would consider a need as far as the proposals that have come through?
Actually, I do have some of these things here, for instance. Need, let's say an ambulance or New Milford ambulance is a need, correct? This service like this has to operate. Now the proper people that represent those organizations come over in front of us, and they're saying, as of now, we have this much money. This is what's needed. This is what, these are the things we need to buy, and these are the things we need to focus on, because if that doesn't happen, we can jeopardize the well-being of the town, New Milford town people. So that's a need. It's pretty much you're looking at something and it's an essential. Now, there are other things that could be not essential. For instance, I don't know, someone wants to throw a party at the town green, and I think that the ARPA funds could be, okay, how about if we have welcome party or whatever that would be, something non-essential. So in other words, whether or not we're going to have the money spent there, will that jeopardize lives of people in New Milford? No.
Would you consider any of the proposed requests that have been made so far to be just wants rather than needs? So
the proposals right now that we have in front of us, and I'm looking at
there's
them
a lot,
and I'm looking at and for the most part, those are the things after the consultation, after the information that was given to us by different groups. So these are, for the most part, you have. Typically, people come with the justifications for this, right? So after like 1 or 2 or 3 brushing out this topics, you pretty much have, at the end of the day, you have a need. One of the things that it's still in the air, it looks like, and that's why we're going to have a public hearing on the 25th of this month, is the
that's Monday night, folks.
Yeah, that's one of the things that pretty much there were some discussions about, and that's where we're going to have a public participation to talk about the reservoir dam. So that's still up in the air, and we'll see what the public is going to say. Right now, it's on the agenda, so it's one of this, if you will, needs for this conversation. It's just, what is it going to be, the execution? What we're going to do with this? It's pretty much the case. What's going to be judged, not judged maybe, but it's going to be discussed on 25th.
So we've kind of talked about the ARPA funds to death on this channel, and we've had all the other candidates kind of beat this to death too. So we'll try to stay pretty we'll try to stay pretty short with the ARPA funds. Sal, what are some uses for the ARPA funds that aren't being discussed that you think might be worthy of merit here?
So some of the uses that are not being discussed, Well, it all depends. We don't know the amount of money that would possibly be discussed, right? One of the uses could be, for instance, we have us floating every now and then in town. I know there was a problem with the Corps of Engineering, Army Corps of Engineering doing some stuff. Maybe that needs to be redesigned. I don't know. One of these things that maybe it's something to consider for this Arpa Fund. That's something I can think of right now at the moment. Now, with the Arpa Funds, you have to stay within the limits. So that's your limitation is obviously something you have to take into consideration. So you cannot spend money on anything like this. But for the most part, what we have right now on our list is we're allocating those money pretty wisely.
You think that they all meet those criteria so far?
Yeah. So for instance, I can read those to some of them. We have one of them is for nonprofits. There's some money allocated for Good Samaritan Funds. I mean, that's all within those the limits that the ARPA is saying that you can use, which is linked to the situation that we have with COVID, with the pandemic and all that stuff, right? So they stay within the limits. The amount of money and all that stuff. Obviously, we have those numbers, and as I said again. Before the reservoir dam is something that we need to touch on and just brush it out.
Yeah, so folks that are watching at home, that's Monday night. I think it's at 6:30. It's before the town council meeting on Monday night. If you want to get your thoughts in on the dam project, the ideas under consideration are to either repair the dam and continue to have a reservoir, or to tear down the dam effectively and then instead have a stream, a brook. And there are
so I would strongly recommend to whomever can come over to the public meeting, express his or her opinion. That would be very valuable. Obviously, everybody's got its own opinion. Some of them are mutual, some of them are not. But public participation is so important, because the more people are vocal about what they want to do and how they want to do it, and if it's appropriate, whether shut down the dam or basically repair it, that would be something. That would be something very. So
to that effect, though, as far as you were saying prior about the dollar amounts that are coming before you, it to me the decision making process seems similar to what you're going to be running into if you get elected, of course, in February, March, April, May of next year when it comes to the building of the town budget. The one issue that we know every year, no matter what, as a town council body, you're going to run into. So. During these presentations, I want to focus on the presentations just a little bit tonight. During these presentations, I don't know if you've gotten a chance to see any of them, but there's a lot of presenters, and there's kind of a bit of an information overload that goes on. You guys get a lot of information dumped into your lap. So what do you expect to be your thought process during the actual presentation? What are you looking for? What are you listening for?
So I'm pragmatist first and foremost, right? So when you start doing something, things have to make sense. For not only for me, but for majority of the people that live in this town. That's one thing. The other thing is that what I would be looking for is whether the presentation that you're having or presenting to us, is it like a short term or is it like a long term? So by nature, and because what I do and how I was raised, I do long-term planning. So if I have someone who's presenting to me, it's like, are you looking for ad hoc stuff? You want to, let's say, fix something, or are you looking for a livelihood, more of a livelihood of this town? That says, okay, I want to have something in this town that's going to be way past 2, 3, 4, whatever the years would be, right? So then we're going to live something for other people that's going to be dealing, and in a good sense, and then facts. Basically, like any other presentation, when you go in front of the boards in corporations or something like that, you would have to give first of all, you're presenting what you want to do. You're presenting a case, and then you're explaining why you need it. For the most part, typically what I would be looking for is that whether or not you did your research. In other words, if you want to do something, these are the things that I'm facing also sitting in a corporation, is that you're presenting something, you want to have something to be done. Have you researched this? And if you have researched this, have you taken 1, 2, 3 sources, 4 sources? What are the sources? Now we have your plan A. You gave me the plan A with your research, so I know what you're looking for. Now, what is the plan B?
Sure.
Let's say if something doesn't work, and we're talking hypothetically right now, since we don't have a scenario, right? So a scenario would be different. But then you're looking for plan B. What is the plan B? Let's say you're not gonna get out of the 10 things you proposed. You should have a list of things from 1 to whatever of the priority. These are the things I want to have, for instance. Let's say whatever that would be. So, so let's say our 10 things are not going to fly. Which are the things that are the most important to you and why? Right? Because you're going to the through the board. You would have to be prepared for what is the plan A, what is the plan B, what is your research, why, and then it's going to be more people like this. And since I've participated in so many of those meetings while working for corporations, and I was doing so many of those presentations myself, just things have to add up. And by showing that documentation, you're basically saying that, okay, I've prepared for this discussion. This is what I propose. To the base of my knowledge, this is the best thing that's that's out there on the table. Make a decision.
Right. So
or make a proposal.
So if you had a request of, say, $10,000 for a thing, and a fair question would be, okay, what would you do if you only had $8,000? Is that,
for instance?
Yeah.
Okay. Right? Because it's not only you that's presenting. It's, I don't know, let's say 50, 20 other people, and that everybody has some number in their mind, and obviously let's say it's not coming from the ARP, but let's say it's coming from the taxpayers. These are the taxpayers' money. So now you're asking for the number, and you know you're not the only one in the room. There's more people in the room. Okay, so you have to make a case. Why do you do? Why would you like to do this? And what are the numbers? And again, the plan B is the name of the game, because it's just anything happens, you have to have a contingency. No matter what happens, you have to have a contingency for what you want to do, what you're willing to compromise. Like we're all gonna compromise, right? We're sitting on the board.
Yeah.
We got we've got 50 people. There's gonna be compromise no matter what.
Yeah. There are going to be goalposts, and somewhere in the middle of
absolutely,
that is where the answer
absolutely
is. Yeah.
Negotiation, compromise, and some brainstorming and stuff like this, and all those things have to add up. Somehow it's going to be golden middle. Somehow we're going to come up with this. So plan A, obviously, well documented. Plan B, and then let's have a discussion.
That's a really interesting way to look at things. I don't think I've seen much of that when it comes to these presentations themselves. When it comes to the lines of questioning that I've seen. And with that said, Sal, do you know of any major areas of focus for improvement when it comes to the process and when it comes to the building of the budget?
I think some of the things that we're doing right now are pretty much in line with. I mean, we're the DPW is doing its work. Obviously, there is a lot of going on in that arena. That takes a lot of money. There's money for the New Milford High School roof. There's some other things going on. So what we're doing here is in my opinion, is the right thing to do at this moment. Right now, having said that, too many things to have on the table sometimes is not good. Why? Because it's hard to focus on the things that you have to do. In other words, it's better to have, let's say, 3, 5, 6 things or items on your table. You can discuss. You know exactly what you're dealing with. You have a timelines. You have a project manager scheduled. You have a plan, and you're realistically saying, okay, the plan is going to be, I don't know, whatever you want to do. It's going to take from a month to 3 months to 6 months. Doesn't matter. Then you have a plan. You can focus on these things. As opposed to trying to put 10, 15 things and rush it through and hoping that it's going to work. Chances are it's not going to work.
Do you think that's a good approach with the town council then, to have basically, we'll call it 2 or 3, maybe 4 divisions of members of the town council when it comes to the budget to really hyper focus in on, you three hyper focus in on these 3 or 4 things. You three hyper focus in on these 3 or 4 things. Is that something that you think would be helpful in that process?
So you have 9 people in the town council. So the agreement that we all have to vote on whatever is presented to us. So if your question is whether we should be divided into, I don't know, 3 groups and work on
as far as
things.
the research is concerned, yeah.
So research for the most part is done when the people are coming to you, or that should be done when people are coming to you. So you're being presented with the facts. Now you just have to judge whether the facts presented correctly or not correctly. And myself, I have to do obviously the research based on the facts being presented and the timelines and everything else. Now, in terms of having this different groups, I've seen something like this, especially in the boards, in the corporations, and executive level. But at the end of the day, as a councilman, we're working, we're all voting on things, right? So with the information that's being presented to us, I don't think there is necessity, because we have enough time to make a judgment, to do the research ourselves. If someone told me that we have to do this today, tomorrow, the day after, a week from now, or 3 days from now, obviously that's impossible. Then you have to break into groups, and you strategize. Somehow people are getting the information massaged, and they present you as in a format of a presentation that says, okay, this is what we discussed, this is what we got. But in our case, I don't think that's necessary.
So then in that case, like, one of the things that's going to be interesting moving forward is that we should hopefully be moving beyond COVID by the time we get into February, March, when it comes time to build the budgets for July 1st, 2022 to June 30th, 2023. So what is your expectation from the budget process as we move beyond COVID into at least some sort of return to normalcy?
One of the things is that, first of all, we're gonna focus more on the economic development more than anything else, right? Because with the COVID and a situation that happens in the country, in the town, and everything else, you have to cover the bases, right? People are losing jobs, people have problems to pay rent, mortgages, this and stuff like that. So right now, for the past 2 years, the focus is, okay, how can we have the people that are living in this town and they have a hardship because of the pandemic? Now, past pandemic, right? The economy is at full steam. Now we're going back into the discussion. Okay, we're working on the development this panel. We're not talking about PPP anymore. People are having jobs, people paying mortgages and everything else. So the very basic needs of the people that they didn't have in the pandemic, for instance, let's say they're in much less of a problem than it was before. And then we're moving to the development.
What do you expect? What do you expect to be the effect then on the numbers? Like where do you see numbers going in terms of the budget? Going up, going down in general? There spots where you would expect it to go up. Are there areas where you expect those dollar amounts?
I don't know, to be honest with you, at this moment yet. One of the things that on September 27th, we had a very interesting presentation by 2 people. One of them was Mr. Crunt or Cart, something like this. Croup. Mr. Ollie Crunt or something to that effect, and Betsy Painter. So they gave us a very, very interesting in the presentation about what they're going for or what they're preparing to and all that stuff. So these are the discussions I'm hoping to have more and more as we get out of the pandemic and get out of the COVID area and stuff like this. So that would quite a bit. It would depend on what their findings, what is that they're proposing, which this town is going to go forward, and that would be a very huge input, which is what I'm looking for too.
So when it comes to COVID, should the goal in town be to return to normalcy at some point?
I mean, I don't think there is a doubt on that. Right? Everybody wants to forget about COVID that ever existed, and nobody wants to deal with this anymore. And there's no appetite, to be honest with you, to go to whatever happens last year when everything was locked down. We have to go with the mask, everything. The kids are not going to school and all that stuff. There's no appetite for this in the entire country. So everybody's looking for past that. So as we're looking for something, and we're getting those meetings with the health department, they're giving us some stats and stuff like this. So we're getting out of this, that's for sure. Either based on herd immunity or vaccination stats, or whatever that would be. So that's getting hopefully closer to the end than not. But at the same time, the economic development kicks in. They're crunching numbers. They're doing the research. What happens? What is the need for the town? What can we offer as a town? Stuff like this. So that's being crunched as we speak. We don't talk about this as much because we have the necessities with the COVID to be covered first, but as soon as that kicks in, it's going to be interesting to see. And based on that, then you can see what is that we can do, how much revenue we can bring to the town, right? Let's say the discussion will be different. Let's say a year from now, if we get a call from Microsoft and they're going to say, "Hey, we're going to move into New Milford. Do you have anything against it?" Right? Or for instance, right, they're bringing gazillions of dollars with them. We're talking different conversation with different topic altogether. And let's say if we don't have a Microsoft, then what, right? So you have this contingency, as I mentioned before. Everything is planning, A, B, C, whatever that would be. So it depends what comes, whether the economic development offers, which directions we're gonna go. We'll take that into consideration, plus public participation. It's the need of the town, the people, and that's going to be golden middle.
So I want to put a pin in that idea here, because I actually do have a note about the deferrals that are being offered through a granting of deferrals program for new developers that are moving into town. I want to actually put a pin in that idea that you brought up, because I want to talk about that later. But you also mentioned these presentations that the Health Department Director Lisa Morrissey's been making, and Mike Nahom was on the show over the weekend, and we talked about his exchanges with Lisa Morrissey. And you've seen them; you've been there. You've seen how
I've seen a couple of them.
They've been eventful. We'll call it that. So, what do you think of the points your fellow councilman Mike Nahom has brought up during these exchanges?
So he's actually asking questions, right? So we have a subject matter expert, which is Ms. Morrissey. She's giving us statistics, and for the most part, Mike is asking, "Hey, can you? What do you think about this? What do you think about this?" Like, I believe in one of the meetings I did ask, where do we stand with the herd immunity, right? Yeah. Some of the stuff. So his notion is more basically get informed more than inform someone else of what he thinks. This is at least a notion that I have, and it's just that's my approach too, right? I don't have those statistics in front of me. Someone who sits in the health department, obviously, they have the statistics. They see the patients coming in and coming out. They see how many vaccinations are given out and all that stuff on a daily basis. I don't. Or if I wanted to, I would have to go and get that information from. So he's asking the right question, and Lisa is just giving the best answers she can. To be honest, she's perfect. She's a great person to deal with. She's great and very knowledgeable when she gives you the statistics and information that she's giving out. Like one of the information I did ask for the herd immunity, and stuff like this. So what she gave me, or what she told me, is that we're getting there, but there's also there are different variations of the COVID that are coming out, and it's hard to predict. So you can hope for the best. You get some numbers crunching, but then again, going back to Plan B, what would be Plan B if, let's say, we have another I don't know, variation C, D, whatever that would be of the COVID, right? So that's pretty much what happens. But so far, I don't see anything inappropriate in those questions, and Lisa's just perfect answering those.
And the town council, you don't have any problem with Mike bringing those issues up at town council. You don't consider them necessarily strictly national issues.
No. So again, it's when we're sitting and we're talking to the presenting staff to us, correct? And people are watching us on YouTube, whatever. Not everybody is into this as some other people's, right? So we have to ask those questions to be informational. so that everybody can play this out, I don't know, week 2 or something after this thing, like the meetings like we have, and says, okay, and get to the conclusion. Mike asked this question, Lisa answered this way. Okay, I know what it is. I don't have to go and read the News Times. I don't have to go and find out on Facebook, anything like this. I do have an answer. So for the most part, they're they're informational, as it should be.
So you talked about the data and the metrics that our Director Morrissey's been presenting. One of the things that I really look to when making decision making when it comes to disease outbreaks, at least in my own personal life, are metrics like outcomes rather than transmissibility, rather than infection rates, right? So the outcome we have the most data on by far is deaths. Do you agree with the sentiment that was raised by Director Morrissey that there's been too much of a focus when it comes to performance metrics on deaths?
She was spot on. At the time she was presenting, she was spot on, right? Because at first, when I'm not a medical doctor, so this is not my field. It's just one man's opinion, right? So at the very beginning, you don't know what they're dealing with. So you're trying to come up with something so that doesn't spread, it doesn't cause more damage than in the future. So yeah, and you don't have enough information. And then you're getting the data, and you look at the data, you look at some whatever the statistics comes on. So she was absolutely she was right on. She was spot on these things. That now you have enough data. Now we can look at what exactly happens, all the stuff, and it's all available, especially to the professionals like hers. So she was spot on.
So we're kind of running out of time, so we're going to move on from COVID just a little bit. I really do want to bring up that conversation that I wanted to put a pin into before we get into Q&A. So, folks, we're going to be getting into Q&A in just a few minutes. So, guys, if you have any questions for Sal, and you want to challenge him on a topic, let's say, if you guys think I've been too softballing Sal, this is your opportunity to engage. This is your opportunity to hold both our feet to the fire, get those questions in. Sal, you mentioned the notion of there being what if we had a Microsoft come to town and offer us 3,500 jobs and pay, tens if not hundreds of millions of dollars in taxes effectively to have something like that come in? It kind of harkens back to the development that's been happening and some of the conversations that have taken place as it relates to the tax deferrals that have been granted, the special requests for tax deferrals, property tax deferrals that have been granted for new construction and new private development here in New Milford over the past year and change. So when these new business owners develop new construction in New Milford, does this result in a decrease in tax revenue? First things first, before we get into that, is this a program you support?
Deferral?
The deferral programs for new development.
The tax deferral for the new development it's being exercised all over the world. Just about any country, any town, any municipality that wants to improve economic development is offering some kind of incentives for the business coming in, right? Or whether it's going to be New Milford, it's going to be whatever. That's normal. This is the fact. This is the status quo. That's everybody's doing this thing. Or whether it's going to be US or Europe, doesn't matter. Now, that's what one of the meetings that actually Miss Painter was on. She was explaining this very well how they get into all this information into calculation. How is it going to benefit from this standpoint of work, the tax revenue bringing and all that stuff in whether now or in the future. So go back to your question with the Microsoft. Once we have that proposition, it would be then we can basically have it to be discussed. At this moment, it's hypothetical, and definitely then we would have someone like Ms. Painter coming over and giving us a or Mr. Crunt, something like this, coming over and give us their opinion, because there's a subject matter of SMEs, right? They know this stuff much more than me, and they just give you the evidence, what they think based on the information that they have, and what they think based on similar situation in different towns and whatnot, and what is the trade for this, right? What's the balance for these things? But one thing I want to stress out is that whatever we're doing this town, and I get this from the economic development team, is that they're planning ahead for more than 2, 3, 4 years in the future, right? So let's say you get someone in town, they want to bring business, they want to, whomever it's going to be. Let's say you give them the tax deferral for two years, but based on the numbers, then it's going to be crunched by those people. They're saying after 2 years, we're going to be, let's say year 2, we're going to be net zero, and then we're going above. And yet we're attracting all these people, and yet we have this town growing. Yet we have, just a different economic development altogether. So if you take something like this in perspective for 4 years, and which you should, makes so much more sense. If you take this in perspective, okay, it doesn't make sense because it's not going to work a week from now, a month from now, maybe a year from now. It probably, but then that's where you have the SMEs, the subject matter experts, and they're saying, okay, based on our information and based on what was presented, based on the service level agreement written with those companies, maybe right now we're not going to have the income that we normally would, but for 2, 3, whatever years from now, it's going to be very beneficial for the people.
So, would you suggest then that this results in a decrease? Is this money we're losing out on, or is this money we're really not losing out on then?
So again, you have to take into perspective, right? From are you looking for some quick buck, right? You want to make some quick stuff, or are you looking for something for economic development for 5, 6, 10 years from now? My approach is to look for something 4, 5, 6 years from now. That's it. Now, when you have a companies like Chipotle or something like this, right, coming over here, it's fast food or semi-fast food and all that stuff. But it's a different approach than when you're coming to when you're dealing with companies like Microsoft, because what they bring with them, they bring knowledge. So what does that mean to us? We have young people from right from high school, they can get hired by Microsoft. So how is that benefiting us? Benefiting us greatly, because those people now that they can go and work for Microsoft, for instance. Microsoft's providing student loans for all the corporations. For the most corporations providing student loans, that's a benefit right there, right? You have people that are going to have skills they didn't have before, and it's very marketable. And then at the same time, you're looking for the company that's very known, which you can put it in your marketing brochure, and it says, okay, only one town in Connecticut has a Microsoft, and it's New Milford. That's like you cannot ask for a better resume than this.
Well, okay, so we've talked about this. Then is that opportunity for new employment, is that a primary motivator for migration then to New Milford, or is that?
It's one of them, right? So it all depends on what employment would be. So when we're talking about employment, is the high value skills and the less value skills. Like one of the gentlemen that was presenting to us in September, was it September, I believe? He wants to bring the life sciences, or he's focusing on life sciences, right? It's super hot skill. So when you have those young people who are entering those things, or when you bring those people like this with those skills, especially right now, everybody can work remotely. You're talking about something that's going to be fruitful. It's going to be useful, I don't know, 10, 20, 50 years from now.
Where do you think that okay, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't realize you were going.
No. And then when you have a business like fast food restaurant, so you have a relatively less skilled labor, different pay scale and all that stuff. So it's a different perspective, right? A different company for different things. And what we as a community, especially in this case, we're talking about developing young people. What is that they're going to benefit? I can tell you right now, if we had a Microsoft ever call us, we're definitely going to talk to them.
So, all right. So then in that case, a part of these new development projects, one of the topics that gets discussed is affordable housing. Do you see a difference between capital A, affordable, and capital H, housing, and lowercase a, affordable, lowercase h, housing?
Explain that different way.
Okay, affordable housing, the proper noun under the legal term, and just generically affordable housing. Okay. So do you see a difference between the two, and what would that be to you?
So affordable housing to me is that let's say someone who makes, I don't know, let's say $85,000 a year, a family of 4, they can buy house in New Milford. And the house is not going to cost $1 million like what you have to pay in Long Island or Westchester, right? To me, that's affordability, correct? Someone who makes average income in this country comes to New Milford and says, okay, let's say I have a 10, 20, whatever, 15% down payment, and I'm able to buy a house with the income that they're making in New Milford. That, to me, that's affordability.
Oh, okay. So, do you consider New Milford to be affordable then?
Oh, if you take this in consideration, the different towns, so you go to Fairfield, you go to Norwalk, you go to Stamford, and I have friends all over the place in New Milford living, absolutely, compared to those things. Not only from the point of buying a house, well, although the prices are going up because people are moving in. So it's a supply-demand thing, right? More people want to buy a house than sell a house, stuff like this, so the prices are going up. That's given. It comes in a cycles every 8-10 years. The last time we had this, it was before 2008 and with the financial fiasco. But it's definitely more affordable than anything else. Not only from the housing, like just the value of the house, but also property taxes that we're paying here in Litchfield County versus what you would pay in Norwalk. And as I said, I compared my price in my house of something that I would have to pay, I don't know, half an hour down south. It would be 50-60% more with the probably 50% more taxes. Then to me, let's say I'm making $85,000, it's not affordable anymore. Right so, now I have to cut budgets. I cannot do many things, and it's not affordable anymore. So yes, to answer your question, it's way more affordable than what we have down south.
We've talked about the affordability being an attractive factor to moving into New Milford. We talked about the availability of jobs being an attractive factor when we're talking about internal migration. We even talked about the bucolic setting of New Milford in a certain respect. So what would you consider to be the primary motivating factor for people in general when it comes to internal migration in this country?
So for the most part, people with families are moving to this town. So what is that they're looking for? Safety and schools, and obviously infrastructure, correct? Safety is number one. If you see what's going on with the migration that comes from New York and from different New Jersey, whatever they're coming from, safety is number one for them. Not only for safety for themselves, but for the families. So what does that mean? I buy a house in New Milford, like I have a house, you have a house probably. I don't have to. I'm not worried about closing my door. Sometimes I just go and open my garage. I go to Big Y and get a grocery and go back in the garage. It's still open, for instance, right? To me, that's safety. I send my kid to school, or my two kids I had. I send them to school. I don't have to be worried that they're being bullied. I don't have to worry that something is going to go on. I don't have to be worried that someone's going to bring a gun to school or anything like this. So that's the safety, right? It's my safety, my family's safety, my kids' safety, and then that in total is the basis of everything, right? Because I'm moving to the place that I want to be. First of all, I want to have a good, just a normal life, safe life, and I can go about my business. I either travel or go to the corporation, whatever I do. But I don't have to think about the very, very base of this, of what's going to happen to my family, if anything. And this is what we're successful in, right? Our crime rate compared to, I don't even want to compare this to Bridgeport and New Haven, because these are different towns, different dynamics and like this, right? But this whole area is pretty much very safe. That's why people are moving in. That's precisely what they're moving in. They're moving with families like myself. That's what I was looking for when I was looking for to get a place. Affordability was one thing, obviously, but then it doesn't matter if it's affordable. If I'm afraid to get out of the house, I'm afraid to drive a car and park in I don't know, somewhere by the grocery store and the car to be stolen. Right? The quality of life is definitely going down because of this. Because now I have to worry about completely different things. Never mind that my insurance goes down and everything else with that kind of style of life. So safety is definitely one of the things that we're doing a great job in this town. We got the right police force, we got the right chief, and these are the things. Now, the second thing that we're discussing is also the infrastructure, right? I mean, it's a hilly town. We're going up and down, left and right, all that stuff. So that's why Mayor Bass and DPW and obviously with our help, also we're approving some stuff where the pavements are being done, the road is improved. It's safer at the same time, right? So because I drive my son sometimes over, I have to go over the hills, and I have a truck or bus or something like this right next to me, and it's just easier to go when roads are fixed, and I don't have to worry about the safety driving because someone's going to hit me because we don't have enough space, and there's pothole and a pothole and a pothole. So again, things take time. Well, we're going the right direction, right? And then that's your infrastructure. These are the two main things that when you're moving in, you want to have, because you think it's going to be given. You take it as a granted. Sometimes it is granted, sometimes it's not granted, but you think that this is going to be provided to you. Why? Because you're paying taxes, right? And you want to have this kind of style. You want to have this lifestyle, and that's what you're expected to do.
So, Sal, that kind of brings us right back to where we started, why you moved into New Milford. And with that rounding up of things, we've kind of run out of time here. So before we get into our Q&A real quick, Sal, you want to tell people how they can reach and follow you on the campaign trail?
I can be found on salrynkiewicz.com. I'm sorry, not salrynkiewicz.com. Sal Rynkiewicz. You can find me on Facebook. You can Google me. I have a LinkedIn profile. So if you look for Sal Rynkiewicz on LinkedIn, you can see what I do and stuff like this, what my profession is. These are main things. You can always email me at sal@rynkiewicz.biz. I have my own domain, so it's my first name Sal and then my last name, which is RYNKIEWICZ.biz. You can always email me on the council email that was set up, and it's accessible by everybody on newmilford.org website. Either or is okay with me.
All right then, Sal. Well, I wanted to say thanks for Paul Murphy and thanks for Alessandro, whose name I'm sorry I cannot pronounce correctly. I don't know how to do it. Sorry, Alessandro. But thanks for the shout outs to you guys. I don't see any questions in our comment section here, Sal. So we got right on to the dot here just after 8 o'clock. Sal, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it so much.